You have to understand how enticing it is to be a liberal, to be under their bubble, because you don't have to be accountable. You don't have to meet any levels, or there isn't a bar. You don't have to be in shape. You don't have to have a job. You don't have to have a sexuality. You don't have to have any, you can be whatever you want to be, whatever's in your fantasy on your keyboard, and they all come together, and there's only one common thing they have, is that President Trump is evil, and anyone associated with him is trying to ruin the world. So this is one of the pockets in America that we have a whole generation of people that don't have to put any effort forward in life, because America has worked so well to where you can be a person who doesn't participate. We used to call them social deviants, right? They didn't want to be a part of, they didn't want to be a part of the American way. They didn't want to dress. They didn't want to be a part of the culture. Now they're being told that they're special, every one of them. And here's the thing, you can be, and they're all ignorant.
Yeah.
And it's not performative. They found their base.
Yeah.
They found they have nothing better to do. And they only attack things for cameras. So if you stand in front of a police officer and yell and scream at them, they've been told they can't touch you.
Yeah.
That's why they were so shocked with what happened when, lo and behold, you try to run a police officer off or an ICE off with a car, he's gonna shoot you.
Yeah.
What? They can't do that to us. Because so this whole thing is, there is no conversation to be had. Do not engage these people. You can't engage with them because all they want is the moment.
Plot holes have been opening up all over social media after Minneapolis' shooting this past weekend. It's a matter of life or death for our country that we understand the ramifications of what is very likely the grand unifying theory of leftists. Right now, a good percentage of conservatives or conservative-adjacent types are abandoning logic to claim the shooting of ICE protester Alex Preddy was unjustified. Many of these remarks focus on the legality of carrying a weapon and use a logical argument that goes something like this. I'm a conservative/libertarian. I believe citizens have a right to bear arms. This belief is extended to all Americans, regardless of their political leanings. Therefore, Preddy should not have been shot for carrying a weapon. Yet these statements do not follow. Preddy was shot while engaging in an extended struggle with law enforcement while armed. Before that, he clearly acted in a manner consistent with violating 18 U.S.C. 111, a law I happen to know pretty well. It goes assaulting, resisting, or impeding federal officers, right? So before that, protesters within Minnesota had organized to carry out these very same illegal actions on a wide scale. And before that, the state of Minnesota had been caught up in a multi-billion-dollar scandal using our tax dollars to fund anti-American or even terroristic organizations, which then used more money to subvert democracy by buying votes or by facilitating illegals voting in the country. And before that, the majority of U.S. citizens voted for Donald Trump in order to fight wanton immigration abuse and get rid of fraud. So that's the true context of this whole shooting that happened over the weekend. Preddy is merely the single candle standing atop a giant crime cake. To even insinuate that the shooting happened because ICE agents could not countenance the sight of a leftist carrying a weapon is gross mischaracterization of the facts. It shifts the blame to the agents on the scene who had to deal with chaos that was deliberately weaponized against them. Not because they were the ones committing crimes, but because they were enforcing our laws. It's also a transparent attempt to divert from Preddy's many unfortunate choices by making this a discussion about gun rights instead of the real story, which is criminals protecting crime. But rightists or libertarians who fall into this trap fall for Loki'S Gambit. They stupidly took the left's sudden concern for Second Amendment rights as a sincere pivot to our side of that argument. Most people are familiar with the Marvel Comics characters Thor and Loki, right? And to be honest, that's the version of them I know. I'm not like some kind of guy who goes around reading Norse mythology. Unfortunately, I'm more of a comic book guy. Confession made. Loki, the character, is an inveterate liar. His guiding motivations are to amass power, wealth, and a following. He is, in this respect, the consummate leftist. At the beginning of the story arc presented in the comic book movies, Loki is very successful in his subterfuge. That success rate goes down as a few movies in, Thor catches on. He not only becomes more wary of his trickster brother, he even succeeds in turning the tables on him through some trickery of his own. Thor wouldn't be a very likable character if he kept allowing himself to be fooled by his own brother. Who wants to root for a gullible moron? When he tricks the trickster, it shows growth and development of character. At several points, Loki plays at amending his ways. Sure, he was deceptive, but he didn't mean to cause so much trouble, and gosh, he was really sorry for all the harm he did. Of course, he doesn't really mean it. He's only saying what is most useful in the moment to get Thor to do what he needs him to do. But as an audience, we can't help but want to join Thor in forgiving Loki. He's not just a powerful Asgardian, he's incredibly charming in a way that is both oily and charismatic. We want Loki on Team Thor because there's such potential for him to do good. His powers are in fact morally neutral. Loki is free to direct his actions towards ultimate good or towards his own selfish ends, like we all are. The fact that he's been so successful a villain means that he would make an equally effective and even compelling hero. This longing to see Thor accept Loki's contrition at face value reflects a core human desire. Comic book writers have long understood that readers yearn for villains and heroes to team up against a larger threat or a greater evil. This plot device has been exploited so many times. Comic books are lousy with characters that routinely oscillate from villain to hero and back again. Everyone loves it when the villain turns out to have some sincere feelings, some good in his heart after all. But to believe that about the current situation in Minneapolis with leftists, we must ignore an enormous plot hole. And here it is. Was the Pretty shooting just a case of someone exercising his Second Amendment rights? Or did the police have reason to believe lives were in danger? Is there any reason to think that a leftist armed with a gun might intend to do some damage? It's also important to point out that leftists only advocate for gun control after shootings when the person who committed the crime is A, not a protected minority class, and B, not an apparent leftist. To that end, consider these following three examples. Case study, the shooting of Steve Scalise. In 2017, a Bernie Sanders supporter tried to murder the entire Republican softball team, succeeding only in wounding Representative Steve Scalise before being neutralized by police. The left-wing outlet factcheck.org noticed, quote, "Still, the response from gun control advocates in Congress was noticeably quieter than it had been compared to other high-profile shootings, which some attributed to the politics of the situation. The shooter, who was killed by police, expressed anti-Republican views before the attack. Congressional leaders were taking efforts to demonstrate unity." In other words, the shooter's political motivation prevented Democrats from advocating for gun control legislation. If they really believed that those laws would have saved lives, then their silence in this instance sends a really disturbing signal, doesn't it? It's a major plot hole. This case study, Nashville Covenant school shooting. 4 days after the 27 March 2023 Covenant shooting, there was an outpouring of support for gun control in the state of Tennessee, culminating in a protest at the state capitol attended by Ali Fedotowsky, a celebrity apparently. I don't know who that is. The furor died down, however, as conservatives pushed back with a counter-narrative that the shooter, Audrey Hale, was in fact trans. By the time a portion of her manifesto was released by Steven Crowder in the following November in 2023, the conversation had shifted. Gay rights advocates insisted the conversation had to be about gun control, not the shooter's mental state. Quote, "The manifesto should not be published," Jordan Budd, the executive director of Children of Lesbians and Gays Everywhere, a mouthful, told Newsweek. "The focus should be on how this was able to happen in the first place. There should not be any such easy access to deadly weaponry." I don't know why I used that voice. When the shooting was still fresh in people's minds, the left moved to push for gun control. As the shooter's identity started to dominate the conversation, the concern shifted to finding excuses to keep it under wraps. Despite having access to the same manifesto that Crowder released, then Attorney General Merrick Garland insisted that there was no clear indicator as to what the shooter's motivation might be. When the shooter's identity conflicts with leftist gun control goals, their institutions go into overdrive to keep that information from coming out. Why? Because they don't advocate for gun control when they're the ones carrying the guns. Case study, armed leftists. From the New Black Panther Party to the John Brown Club, the Redneck Revolt, the Socialist Rifle Association, the Armed Queers of Salt Lake City, and the Liberal Gun Club, amongst possibly many others. These are all examples of organizations that wear their love of guns on their sleeves. They are private militias organized around specific terroristic, political, and self-defense narratives. And there are no calls from the left for these groups to disarm, nor are they considered a threat. One could defend this apparent hypocrisy by saying these groups are viewed by the left as a necessary evil in order to defend against gun-toting right-wingers. But a hypocritical stance with an excuse is still a hypocritical stance. It demonstrates the plot hole theory. Leftists are not confused or insane. They're lying. It's not that the left has different principles. It's that they have no principles at all. People on the right do have a set of principles that guide their actions. So our behavior is logically consistent with what we say. For example, conservatives oppose abortion. So we don't embrace the idea of abortion for the children of leftists. Nor do conservatives oppose leftists' right to bear arms, to the contrary of present-day internet screeching. Similarly, you can have a left-wing nurse or doctor or practitioner go on social media and say, "I'm never going to serve or help a MAGA Republican or any ICE officer again." And that kind of behavior is so beyond the pale for right-wingers, but it's not beyond the pale for left-wingers, and they don't understand why we don't do it ourselves. What we see in these cases is evidence that for the left, words and deeds are out of sync. The only determining factor guiding their push for gun control, for example, is the circumstance of each case. And then the plot hole deepens with their circumstantial beliefs. When the shooter is a known leftist, there is no call for gun control. If a leftist shooter's political affiliations are not widely known initially, as was the case of Audrey Hale, or ridiculously enough, the Trump assassin Ryan Wesley Ruth, the media and institutions run interference as long as possible. But of course, they only do that when the trigger man is a leftist. When the shooter's beliefs include white supremacy, well, actually, in this case, it was white supremacy, as was the case in El Paso Walmart shooting, there is no issue using that detail to both demonize conservatives as domestic terrorists, welcome to the club, while advocating for gun control. However, when the people flaunting their love of guns are themselves hardcore leftists in militias, this fact is met with either silence or fawning news pieces expressing appreciation in outlets like the Rolling Stone. Plot holes don't care if you're on the left or you're on the right. It isn't about disbelieving everything a leftist says. It's about trying to explain why someone's views are inconsistent, especially with their actions. If this were a story, would it make sense? Why should we expect more integrity and consistency from a Marvel comic book character than we do from those who, in our actual life, are trying to win us over to the radical agenda in the name of helping our country? When you question the left's inconsistencies, you come to understand that there's no underlying belief system or philosophy at play here. There never was. The best explanation for why the leftists' words and deeds are completely divorced from their professed views over gun control isn't hard to fathom. They want gun control, but only for you. Just like leftists don't want mass migration per se, they only want mass immigration that benefits them. The world of the plot hole people is one where our legal system has laws for thee, but not for me. This is the de facto system in the United States right now. It's evident in their circumstantial advocacy for gun control. It's evident in their circumstantial love of mass migration. It's evident in their circumstantial love of crime. Conservatives criticize the two-tiered justice system. I don't know why. Calling it out will do nothing to rectify it. In fact, to call it out is to signal to the left that their system is working as intended. No law instituted by Congress is enforced in the same manner for those on the right and for those on the left. In Congress, left-wingers and right-wingers work together to pass laws. And the left knows full well that with the right people as AGs and judges, the system will work as they intended, which is as a trap for the right wing and free rein for the left. The evidence for this intent is based on their love of the outcome. We can see the corrupt courts in DC and Minnesota. We witness the endless criminal coddling by Soros attorney generals. Why do we pretend that this is the product of some accident or the result of deliberate design? If we attend to the plot holes, we won't be distracted by myriad ideological suppositions or driven to fits of anger over their supposed hypocrisy. Instead, we will understand that every leftist is Loki. And when they speak, it's not to communicate sincere feelings or even devout beliefs. It's to fool us, to manipulate us. This past weekend, we saw far too many on the right buy into the framing that Preddy was just a poor, innocent protester who happened to have a gun. By doing so, many played into the hands of the tricksters. These tricksters aren't picky. Both two-tiered gun control and two-tiered protesting laws, they both serve their purpose. They'll work for both at the same time. Paying attention to their plot holes prevents us from being like Thor when he's fooled by Loki's theatrics. We desire to see our opponents reformed and the two sides of American politics finally uniting, but that doesn't mean we have to believe liars. It's not like this desire to unite is wrong-headed or evil. That value judgment doesn't even come into play because they aren't acting in good faith. The left is not sincere, as is evidenced by the fact that their pronouncements are always riddled with plot holes. Loki's gamble is a kind of emotional judo, taking something we sincerely long for, namely unity, and using it to foment even more strife to justify even more violence against our law enforcement, and thus our laws, and thus the electorate that wanted those laws to be put into place. There is nothing about what's going on in Minnesota right now that is even remotely pro-democratic or pro-freedom. It is by design an operation against both. Plot hole theory reveals that our greatest difficulties when dealing with the left isn't the left, it's ourselves. It's our natural human desire to believe the best of people. We perceive leftists as our mirror images. We have beliefs, philosophies, and ideologies, and these are what motivate, direct, embolden, and temper our thoughts, words, and actions. Leftists do not share our same culture of ideology or belief. Their concerns are always immediate and self-serving. For them, communication is not a process of sharing ideas, but a weapon of manipulation, trying to trick us into doing what they want us to do. And it works. It shouldn't. If a chunkhead like Thor could figure out Loki, we have no excuse. Not if we want to be the heroes of our own story, and not if we want to win.